first game we're going to be featuring between Sam Pandelis and Juan Salerno, Australia versus Argentina here. Sam is going to be running Heatran with that Shuckerberry, an item that we've been seeing picking up recently on Heatran, Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Iron Hands, Roaring Moon, and Landorus.
Yeah, so a wonderful team. Did really well at Toronto last week with Paul Chua. Just lots of really interesting choices here. I think the Shukaberry gives a lot of cool options for Heatran to be able to survive a ground type attack without Terra-ing, or to still Terra if it would like to take even less damage. Lots of nice choices here with just like a lot of potential for damage, some nice adaptability, just like a strong all-around team, the kind of thing that gives you a lot of options when you're going into a match, and maybe don't want to use a team that you've been using a lot before because it's easy for an opponent to counter team you at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And just take a look at Sam's achievements on the left there with OCIC top 16 in the very recent 2023 season. It's also worth knowing that Australia and Argentina faced last year in the qualifier stage, and back then Australia won 5-3. So it'll be interesting to see how they are able to keep up that record or not coming into this year. Knockoff, of course, on the Roaring Moon, a move that we have access to newly with the Teal Mask DLC, and it's brilliant to see it back. One of the most powerful dark type moves in the game, and a move that's really making Roaring Moon so relevant in Regulation Set E.
Yeah, it's waited a while, but it's finally getting there. It's more relevant now. It's got that knockoff. A really powerful option. Just like there's so many options with dynamic speed as well with knockoff. If you happen to outspeed a Landorus, you can knock off the Choice Scarf and let your partner go before it. There's just a lot of really powerful options here. One other choice, the Fluttermane has Misty Terrain as its fourth move. There's a bunch of different choices that you can use. I think that one's super interesting because there's definitely times where Amoonguss exists just because when a Fluttermane's on the field, that sometimes means a free spore, and now it doesn't necessarily. I think that gives a lot of really interesting choices, and even maybe lowers the damage of some dragon type attacks if that ever comes up.
Yeah, it feels strange having a move like Misty Terrain when you're running that Choice Specs item, because of course Choice Specs isn't going to be boosting Misty Terrain in any way. But sometimes you just need to click one move in order to tie up the game. So let's see if that will come into play against Juan Salerno of Argentina. And he will be using that Ogerpon with the Wellspring Mask, Fluttermane, Heatran, Iron Hands, Chien Pao, and Landorus. And of course, he's no stranger to fantastic accomplishments as well, being the Natal regional finalist in the recent 2023 season. So both of these teams, they have Choice Scarf Landorus on them, which is really interesting in the face of Hisuian Arcanine, which has been the intimidator of choice rising up through the ranks in Regulation Set E.
Yeah, I think Landorus, it's really hard to get rid of that thing. It's just so strong. And yeah, absolutely. Just like I guess both making the call that Landorus might complement this particular team composition a little bit better certainly seems helpful with the number of Heatrans that are on both sides of the field. But that Shukaberry might make things a little bit more complicated. Really quickly though, I just want to shout out Argentina's been doing spectacularly. I believe they're up 4-2 right now against Australia, and there's just like so many accomplishments from Juan's end. Obviously, Sam Pandelis incredibly accomplished, but that OCIC champion in the seniors division, LAIC top 4 in 2020, and the Santiago special event finalist in 2020, in addition to the Natal regional finalist you highlighted. Just so many wonderful accomplishments from Juan, and I'm really excited to see great things from him today. I think Argentina has a lot of momentum.
Yeah, they really do. And these are two trainers who are no stranger to being very high up in competition standings, excuse me. So it'd be fascinating to see how these teams and these players match up into each other. As we get into game one very shortly, we'll be getting that game ready for you. So, Hayden, coming into this first game between these two trainers and these two teams, how do you think it's going to go down? We will find out as Landorus and Heatran join the field. We're getting straight into the game. Sorry to take that away from you there, Hayden. But the momentum is right underway. So it's going to be for Sam, Heatran, and Fluttermane, and Landorus and Heatran for... Landorus and Fluttermane for Sam, and Landorus and Heatran for Juan.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Choice Scarf Landoruses, and I think maybe a crucial point that you were leading up to is that we don't know how those speeds interact. That could be pretty important here, just if we get to a point where those Landoruses are low, and we're going to find out right away which one's faster, which one can pick up the other one in later turns of the game. Really nice to have that momentum from the Landorus on Sam's side, facing down that Heatran, but a little bit tough to navigate maybe with the option for Terra, with the Intimidate, lowering the damage, and the Heatran can also just go for a Protect and try to bait an attack from that Landorus, as we see here.
Exactly, seeing what these Pokemon will be locking into with two choice items on Sam's side of the field. It's going to be that U-turn, chipping away at Fluttermane, going into the back for Juan. And if Sam has locked into his own U-turn, he has the benefit now of seeing which Pokemon comes in, and it will be that Ogerpon. So if it is a U-turn, and it exactly is that, it's going to be a super effective hit into that Ogerpon, takes it really quite well, quite a bulky Ogerpon, losing about a third of its health. And now Sam can switch in a Pokemon of their own from the back, and it's going to be that Iron Hands joining the field. So this futuristic Hariyama is now threatening a fake out onto the field as Moonblast goes straight into the Ogerpon, and it's enough for the knockout. So Juan loses Ogerpon without having achieved anything in this turn.
There's a spectacular amount of momentum from Sam on this first turn, just not worrying about any Steel-type potential moves from that Heatran, just taking that KO right away. That's such a big deal. It does give Juan this option now to bring in the fake-up momentum, and again we have this question of there's some overlapping Pokemon on each side, and it's really important to know who's going first. Sometimes it's better to be slower, as Sam just demonstrated. That U-turn going off second meant that Ogerpon was KO'd, and it allowed a lot more positioning in terms of deciding what Pokemon hits the field. But these Iron Hands, you really want to have the faster takeout, and so it's going to be interesting to see who has that. There's a lot of information here that's relevant not just for this game, but for players deciding who wins the stats.
With a critical hit for style points on Juan's fake out going first, so it could be fast, it could be a speed tie, as Moonblast is enough to pick up the knockout with a critical hit on Juan's Iron Hands. You don't see an Iron Hands being taken care of so quickly every day, and Juan is already down to their final two Pokemon in this matchup, and Flash Cannon isn't even enough to pick up the Fluttermane on Sam's side. So just to add insult to injury there, as Landorus rejoins the field now for Juan, and it will be dropping the physical attack of Iron Hands on Sam's side. So the momentum very much in Sam's favor here.
That Fluttermane is doing spectacular work in this first game. Definitely the MVP. It's going to be interesting to see what Sam's plan is in situations where maybe you don't get the critical hit with a Moonblast, but it's a wonderful bit of momentum to capitalize on here, and it gives him some options to do some repositioning and maybe confirm whether those Landorus's are speed tying or whether his is indeed a little bit slower than the opposing side of the field, while he's still in a great position for this set.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe how quickly this first game is going by, Hayden, as Heatran will be keeping itself safe with the Stomping Tantrum landing down onto Sam's Fluttermane. It goes down, but it's done more than enough work. That Fluttermane was an utter pain for Juan's team, as Sam now has the benefit of bringing in a Pokemon from the back, and he's very much got the resources in his favor here, staring down that Heatran and that Landorus.
Yeah, a lot of options here for Sam. He sort of gets to pick the way he wants to conclude the game at this point almost. Having that Roaring Moon with the Flying Terra against a Stomping Tantrum locked Landorus gives him a pretty strong way to end this game eventually. He can take all the time he wants to get to that point though. There's a lot of ways to maybe try to confirm some information, maybe figure out how much this Terra Blast does to the Landorus and get a few more options.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important to stay rooted in the game, even if you feel like it either has or hasn't gone your way, in order to glean that information going ahead to the future games. And it's going to be a Terra here in our very first game that we're streaming this weekend, coming into the Landorus on Sam's side. So it will now be that flying Terra type, threatening big damage with a Terra Blast, letting out a little victory cry there, ready to deal some massive damage. But it will be a responding Terra coming out on Juan's side of the field, going into their own Heatran, keeping itself safer from a ground-type move that could well be threatened by Sam's own Landorus. Don't be fooled by that heart on its head. It's still here, and it means business. With Fake Out coming out into Juan's Heatran, it won't be able to act this turn with that Flying-type Terra Blast connecting down onto Juan's own Landorus, dealing a big amount of damage, bring Landorus down to only about a quarter of its health there. Stomping Tantrum will be a super effective hit into Sam's Iron Hands, but just a testament to the bulk on that Pokemon that it's able to take that really quite comfortably.
Yeah, that was spectacular bulk from that Landorus. I think also just a wonderful point for why it is so crucial to be careful with cleaning up endgames, even when you feel like you're in a strong position. That, I believe that's confirmation now that the Landorus's are speed tying. Oh, now here it is again, confirmation. And that's really important for both players to be able to know going forward. For reasons like this, that Stomping Tantrum could have finished off the Iron Hands before the Terra Blast finished off the Landorus. That's really important to know in a Game 2 situation.
Exactly, especially when you have U-turn available on your Landorus, so you have the benefit of seeing which Pokemon is switching in before you do your own U-turn. As Landorus is now locked into the field, and it will be taking a little bit of Magma Chip at the end of each turn thanks to that Magma Storm. Heatran brought down to about half its health by that Wild Charge. So it's now Heatran against the world. Juan has been able to call this back really quite well, given that Sam is now down to his final 2 Pokemon. But a very commanding performance from Sam, and those first couple of turns in the game really crucial for him. And of course, with Heatran in that Fairy Terra type, Knockoff will no longer be doing neutral damage. It's going to be a not very effective hit here for Sam. But as you say, Hayden, really fantastic for these trainers to confirm that their Landorus are speed tying, and that's crucial information going into the next game. And I hope that Juan has been gleaning further information that he might be able to use in order to try and turn Game 2 around for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sam did this really well of not revealing the Roaring Moon until the very end. There's maybe a way that this game could have played out that he didn't have to reveal that information at all, which would have been really helpful. But Juan's managed to really put up enough pressure to confirm, okay, I know which 4 Pokemon Sam thought were the best for Game 1. Maybe that helps me to make a plan as both players get the information about the speed tag. And it definitely seems like Juan has a lot of options for damage. He just needs to find some way for that Flutter Mane to not knock out every single one of his Pokemon. I believe we have Game 2 ready, so let's see what he chose to attempt in this second game.
Let's see how these trainers will be mixing it up, and it's going to be Flutter Mane and Ogerpon joining the field here for Juan, and Landorus and Flutter Mane, the lead that was successful for him last time for Sam. So a little bit of a switch up, and the nice thing about having Ogerpon out now is that you can immediately terrestrialize it and go for all that special defense boost.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the safest ways to make sure Ogerpon doesn't get knocked out on the Switch is to not switch it. And so there's this option now to be able to put a lot of pressure down on this Landorus and the Flutter Mane. With that terrestrialization option, the downside is that it's intimidated, and that's going to be a bit tough to work around later in the game, unless those IV Cudgels start landing critical hits.
Which they could well do. It has that heightened critical hit chance, as Flutter Mane is going immediately on the offensive for for Juan. They're able to threaten really big damage. Follow Me coming out from Juan's Ogerpon, a Pokemon that you can use offensively or defensively, but that U-turn is going to be a super effective hit into Juan's Ogerpon there. So it might only have 1 turn in it, but sometimes that's all you need in order for your main attacker to get good damage off. With Iron Hands joining the field, so past Paradox Pokemon next to future in the form of that Flutter Mane and Iron Hands. A big Terra boosted Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam coming out though onto Sam's side. Iron Hands taking that still with about a third of its health remaining, and Shadow Ball will be connecting down into Juan's Ogerpon. So this Ogerpon has had a terrible day at the office so far. It's not been able to achieve a great deal in either game, but at least it was able to get that Follow Me off in this game. So we can only assume that Shadow Ball could well have been going into Juan's Flutter Mane, which would have been a super effective hit pre-terrestrialization. As Landorus rejoins the field here, dropping the attack stat of Iron Hands crucially on Sam's side, and able to threaten potentially a knockout with a super effective Stomping Tantrum.
I think one crucial fact here is that the Ogerpon did a great job sacrificing itself to help its Flutter Mane friend, but the Flutter Mane going for the terrestrialization means either Pokemon was vulnerable for the fake out here, and that might have made one's plans for this turn a little bit more difficult. Although we see that Dazzling Gleam get off without incident.
It does, yeah. Iron Hands chooses to focus down onto the Landorus rather than the Flutter Mane. Iron Hands is down. Flutter Mane is hanging on with a sliver of HP there. It's able to get a Shadow Ball off into Juan's own Flutter Mane, no longer a super effective hit, and a very well-trained Flutter Mane at that, able to survive on more than half of its health. And joining the field for Sam now, it will be his own Landorus, dropping the attack stat of Juan's Landorus there. So Juan has a little bit more momentum behind him in this game as compared to Game 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that chip damage on the Flutter Mane is definitely tough to navigate. I'm sure Juan would have preferred to just knock out that Flutter Mane and not have to worry about that. There's definitely some pressure from Sam's Landorus to outspeed and KO the Flutter Mane. But as you mentioned, like definitely a lot more tools here, a good amount of damage that Juan was able to achieve. I said, oh, your Flutter Mane caused problems before, now my Flutter Mane has problems. Although it may have reached the end of its time on the field.
Yeah, exactly. Flutter Mane trying to play each other at their own game. U-turn is enough to pick up the knockout onto Sam's Flutter Mane, so it will be down. Sam down to his final 2 Pokemon here. And Landorus is, of course, after that U-turn, ricocheting back to Juan. able to bring in a different Pokemon from the back as Landorus stares down this Iron Hand with Fluttermane joining the field. These are the top 3 usage Pokemon we've seen traditionally in the live tournament so far on the circuit. Landorus, Fluttermane, and Iron Hands, with Stomping Tantrum bringing Iron Hands down to about a third of its health. So this game feels a little bit more evenly matched. Both of these trainers trying to get the better of the board position they find themselves in as Roaring Moon joins the field. And I tell you one thing, it does not enjoy one little bit staring down a Fairy Terror type Fluttermane.
Yeah, I really like the way that Juan played that last turn. Really crucial difference from last time is that he still has the Landorus in the back after Sam is down to his last 2 Pokemon, and so that Intimidate is incredibly helpful. It gives a lot of options for maybe getting this Fluttermane to survive an attack and be able to threaten this Roaring Moon with a lot of damage. Even after Terrestrialization, it won't be negligible. And having that Landorus being able to come in without Intimidate and having all of that pressure on these 2 Pokemon could be really, really helpful for Juan. At the same time, he's got the Fake Out pressure from the Iron Hands for this turn to really reduce the damage output from Sam's side of the field. It gives him a lot of options.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of options indeed, with Terrestrialization coming out for Sam's Roaring Moon, crucially getting rid of that double weakness to Fairy as it goes for that flying type. Able to deal massive acrobatics as Fake Out is going to connect into Sam's Landorus, so it won't be acting this turn. Moonblast being directed into the Landorus on Sam's side of the field, and that is enough for the knockout. So it's now all down to this Flying Terror type Roaring Moon to tie up this game for Sam. It's a tall order, but where there's a Flying Terror boosted acrobatics, there is a way as Fluttermane goes down for Juan, and with it, their Terror option with that Fluttermane, which again has been so useful. This really has been the matchup of the Fluttermane so far across both these games for these trainers, being fantastic presences on the field. As Juan down to just his Landorus and Iron Hands now.
Yeah, I think Fluttermane definitely did its job for one side of the field this time around. Really helped to get that damage off. And I think just crucially being able to get Sam down to the back foot first, so the Landorus can come in with an Intimidate and have this pressure with the Choice Scarf Rock Slide that he's able to go for here. It depends a little bit on whether these hit, but that one did. And unless this Acrobatics is doing really well, or that Rock Slide misses the next turn. Oh, but the... Okay,
oh, and the Iron Hand survives. It's able to get that Wild Charge off. It's super effective hit, of course. Fortunately, the Roaring Moon didn't flinch there, but it was too little too late, unfortunately. And as you said, Hayden, that Intimidate, the Iron Hand was still able to hang on there with just a little bit of HP. So Juan is able to claim this game 2, and we'll be going to a game 3 between these 2 fantastic trainers.
I'm very curious to see. I feel like Sam has a lot of potential adjustments as we go into this game 3 that could really throw off Juan's plan, and we'll have to see how he adjusts for this 3rd game.
Yeah, exactly. I think, was the Roaring Moon even worth bringing that position? We shall have to see if Sam is going for it again, and it looks like a switch up with Iron Hands and a Moongus joining the field. Ogerpon with the Wellspring Mask and Fluttermane for Juan. So that is the lead that worked for Juan in game 2, and Sam is changing things up dramatically here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going to be really interesting to see how useful this Amoonguss is. It seems like Juan has a lot of Pokemon to do damage to Amoonguss, but didn't bring most of them, the Heatran or the Chien-Pao in the previous game. So I think it's a really cool adjustment. Maybe one of those times where Juan's wishing that his Fluttermane had the Misty Terrain so that he could make sure that Spore didn't happen, but not an option from his side of the field. So we'll have to see what he does here. The Fluttermane threatens a lot of damage, but you really never want Pokemon to go to sleep, and I do not see a way for Juan to avoid that happening at least once this game.
Yeah, exactly. It's Amoonguss here is doing what it does best. You're providing a nuisance on the field, and of course able to use Rage Powder just as Ogerpon uses Follow Me as a big Moonblast connects down into Sam's Iron Hands, bring it down to about a quarter of his health, and there you go, Hayden. It's going to be that Fluttermane taking a little nap on the field. Of course, Ogerpon, being part Grass type, is immune to something like that Spore. So already the MVP for Juan from that game 2 will at least be taking one mandatory turn of sleep.
I think a wonderful way to adjust. Sam isn't trying to one-up the Fluttermane arms race here. He's just trying to make sure the other Fluttermane goes to sleep and can't get those crucial first few turns of damage. It feels like this is maybe a situation Sam's been in a lot in practice, given how readily he went for this and the fact that his Fluttermane has that Misty Terrain. I think he's very aware that this is one of the key problems with Fluttermane. It can do a lot of damage, but not to one of the Pokemon that causes sleep in Amoonguss, and that's a pretty big deal if you time Fake Out support right around that.
Yeah, moreover, a Pokemon that resists those Fairy-type moves with that Poison typing. As Roaring Moon is going to join the field, so Sam has brought Roaring Moon in this game as well. The booster energy going off, so of course it was lost its item now, so Acrobatics will be even more threatening, especially because it's that attack booster energy Roaring Moon as well. So Fluttermane will be staying asleep here, of course. Ivy Cudgel coming out into Roaring Moon, not very effective hit, but Amoonguss, now it's put the Fluttermane to sleep, can get up to some of its other antics with a Pollen Puff going into Sam's Roaring Moon, which has got in entirely safely, now back up to full health.
This is such a wonderful showcase of why Sam's been bringing Roaring Moon to this match. The Dragon defensive typing, not just the ability to have knockoff, gives him so many options here that Ogerpon really isn't threatening it. And the Fluttermane locked into Moonblast earlier because it wanted to do damage to the Iron Hands, but that means it's just helpless in front of this Amoonguss that can keep redirecting those Moonblasts. Even if Fluttermane wakes up, nothing's really going to happen because, as you mentioned before, Amoonguss resists Fairy. There's not really much there. We do see Fluttermane take that extra turn of sleep, but really Sam planned around not needing anything more than the guaranteed turn. Now he's starting to build up those Dragon Dances to try to outpace this Landorus.
Exactly, and having taken an Intimidate drop as well, just getting itself back up to neutral damage here. And Sam is obviously going to want to be capitalizing on the fact that Juan's Fluttermane is sleeping, so trying to remove that from the field as quickly as possible in order to enable his Roaring Moon even further. But a really good showcase of why Amoonguss has been such a presence throughout the eras of VGC since it's ever been introduced. It's able to provide such ample support for the Pokemon on Sam's side of the field. Of course, it would have to worry about a flying type Terra Blast that could be coming out from Juan's Landorus there as well.
Yeah, I think the flying type Terra Blast is a really big threat. Juan definitely has some options to adjust here, but depending on how much damage that that Roaring Moon is able to do to the Fluttermane, this could be a really important turn, because if you finish that thing off, then there's just so many options for Sam's side of the field.
So many options, and as you said earlier, Hayden, with a Rage Powder, where there's a Rage Powder, there's a way, as it would be able to keep Sam's team nice and safe from those big Fairy-type moves, especially since it's locked into the single-target Moonblast, as Roaring Moon is able to get that Terrestrialization off, going for a massive, now neutral Acrobatics, connecting down into Juan's Fluttermane. It is enough for the knockout, so Juan's Fluttermane, Juan's MVP from Game 2, is now down immediately after being put to sleep. And Amoonguss now, you've got this revolving door of Pokemon just pinning down either slot on Juan's side of the field, able to put something to sleep. But crucially, of course, Juan does have that Ogerpon in the back, which hasn't terrestrialized, so it will be keeping that grass type and keeping itself safe from Spore. But in fact, it's going to be Landorus joining the field for Juan, so dropping down this Roaring Moon to -1 of its attack. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sam wants to remove that Landorus as quickly as possible now that the Fluttermane is down, so that it doesn't have to deal with these pesky Intimidates.
Yeah, these pesky Intimidates are definitely the big obstacle for Sam here. I really like the way that he's been playing around the options Juan does have, though. Being able to go for that Spore, calling that the Landorus wasn't going for a Terra Blast, was really important. If he'd instead gone for, say, a Protect on the Amoonguss, he would have had a lot fewer options here because that Iron Hands wouldn't have been asleep. But now he gets one more Dragon Dance, just keeps getting to offset these Intimidates.
Exactly, but it does now have to deal with this super effective Rock Slide and, of course, that flinch chance. Nothing a player wants to see when you're using Roaring Moon, but Spore will be coming down into Juan's own Landorus in this position. So it's two sleeping Pokemon on Juan's side of the field, and this is exactly the position that Sam wants to be in order to try and eradicate this Landorus, which will be having to take a mandatory turn of sleep in order to get the rest of his party in as good a position as possible.
Yeah, that Amoonguss being able to make it through the flinch is just so crucial here. That Landorus being able to continue going for Rock Slides could have posed a real problem, but at this point, Amoonguss is able to just go for that Rage Powder we've been talking about, and Roaring Moon outspeeds and can KO most of the Pokemon on the field, except maybe the Iron Hands, but no one really cares if they're asleep and redirect. Oh, wow.
And the Landorus survives on just a sliver of HP. Exactly, Hayden. Yeah, a very bulky Landorus indeed. It is still asleep, though, so it could wake up this turn, and it could threaten a knockout with that Rock Slide. We'll have to see if it does. A really big turn here for Juan, potentially a way to get back into this game if this Landorus is able to wake up. And of course, Rage Powder isn't going to be doing anything against the spread type move that Rock Slide is. Let's see as Rage Powder goes off onto this Amoonguss, and it will be Roaring Moon going for the Acrobatics, and it's connecting down into the Landorus. It's enough to pick up the knockout there. So Landorus is going down, and those Dragon Dances paying dividends because, of course, the speed of Roaring Moon was not lowered with the Intimidator coming in. So really fast Roaring Moon here, not even needing to worry about those rock slides in that turn.
Dragon Dance really does just give Roaring Moon the perfect answer to Landorus, because it can offset those Intimidates, because it can start outspeeding and not needing to worry about those rock slides going off. It can just KO the Landorus. That survival was so crucial, but the Amoonguss being able to put everything to sleep just gave Sam such a safety net for this game. The only thing he can't put to sleep or redirect is the Ogerpon, but he has Acrobatics for that. There's just so many options from Sam's side of the field. He really seems to have found a combination with just impeccable synergy against the specific Pokemon that he's led Juan into bringing in this third game based on how the first two games were played. Really impressive.
Yeah, Juan is in such an interesting position now as well, because you can Terrastallize your Ogerpon to get around the Flying type weakness, but then you're vulnerable to something like a Spore, and it's going to be that forfeit being locked in. So what a way to kick off this first match of our Week 5 here in the World Cup.